When you arrive at the age of exploration in Civ 7, you get to choose in favor of continuity or a new direction, or maybe a little of both. What you're looking for is a Civ that fits the larger picture of the game you have planned. Or if you're like me, maybe there is no plan and you just want a Civ that can help you go with the flow. Are you looking for a natural progression or would you like a change? This new approach of Civ 7 keeps things open if you want them to be. But the mid game, as always, can get you lost. Do you want to be a clearly focused Civ or a more balanced Civ? And which Civs are better for each victory type? Which ones are flexible enough to adapt to a change in game plan? We're going to look at all of those things to some extent in this tier list-apalooza. But let's jump right into what other tier lists have looked like so far. So, okay, what I've done here is I've found 5 other tier lists that precede what we're going to do here today, and they each rank the various civilizations in terms of, well, where they fall on the tier. Now, the Abbasid, if you look at the 5 people who've ranked the Abbasid, their rank has ranged from A to S to S to A to S. So pretty much top of the line all the way across. That's been pretty consistent. But you'll see with some of these, with changes to some of the Civs over time since the game is released, that there will be changes in some of the ratings. Now, Bulgaria was not added at the beginning of the game, so our first ranker here, and I have them arranged in chronological order, did not have a chance to assess Bulgaria. But since then, Bulgaria has received an a B, an S, and an S tier ranking. So pretty much top of the line as well, with a low of a B, which really isn't all that bad. That still means pretty useful. The Chola have had an A, C, a D, a C, a C. Well, except for the first person who ranked them, pretty consistently, they've been ranked near the bottom. The Dai Viet, well, so far only one person, until today anyway, has had a chance to rank them, and they gave them a B. So we'll see how they do with us today as we look at them a little closer. Then we have Hawaii. Now, this is an interesting case because they begin with an A and a B, even an S tier ranking. And then they drop all the way down to 2 C's from the last 2 people who've done rankings. Well, that's because Australia was essentially nerfed in one of the updates and lost a lot of its culture bonuses. So that explains what's changed there, and we'll see how we feel about them as well today. Then we have the Inca. Now, the Inca have gone through some changes, along with Pachacuti, actually, in terms of how food has been used within the game. Food received a buff in, I think, the very first update, and that kind of changed things. But there's another difficulty with the Inca, and I'll get to that in a sec. So we see they have an S tier ranking, but then a C, then an A, then a B, then a C. They're kind of all over the map, if you'll pardon the expression. And that's because the map has a very big role to play in how well both the Inca and Pachacuti, when it comes down to it, how they do in the game. How many mountains do they get, especially at the very beginning of the game? Mountains are the key to their success. If they don't have a lot of mountains, they don't do well. So the Inca can be very hit or miss, which is something that explains how their rankings are kind of all over the place. Then we have the Majapahit. They get a C and a D and an S and an A and a B. And that's not just a matter of things changing in updates. I think that's a change in how people have seen the civilization as they've come to appreciate them over time. I didn't really know what to make of them at the beginning either, but now I think I'm coming around to the other side of things, and I get a better sense of how they can be used. Some civs are a little harder to figure out at the beginning, and these guys definitely fall into that category. Once we get to the Ming, we see another civ that's consistently ranked fairly high, with one S tier ranking from the first person, then a B, then an A, then a B, then an A. The the general consensus seems to be they're either very good or pretty good as a whole. Certainly useful. I think everybody would agree on that. Mongolia, consistently ranked high again, an S tier, A tier, B, A. So pretty high. Not consistently the highest, which we'll talk about why that might be, because when you first look at them, they do appear very powerful. The Normans, the Normans are a little more over the map here. We have a B, a C, a C, an S tier, and a B. And it's interesting. I think the Normans are somewhere in that middle territory where they're useful, maybe they're not so useful. And we'll talk about that, and I'll tell you where I land on this. The Shawnee, definitely the food buff has helped them, but they were ranked from the beginning an A, but then a D, and then an A, an S plus, the only S plus on our chart, and B. So, how useful are they? How much did the food buff help them? Well, it helped a lot. And that explains that jump from a D to an A that you see there. But somebody from the very beginning thought they had a lot of potential with that A ranking. So the Shawnee generally positive overall in past rankings. The Songhai, a little different story there. We have a C, an A, a C, an A, and a D. Mixed reviews. That's the best you can say about them. Some people feel that what they bring to the table is decent, and others think it's below par, actually. So nobody thinks they're okay. They're either good or they're not good. And that's the most mixed review, I think, in our list here. Spain, the dominant player, if you like, in the exploration age, in real life, gets a C, a C, a D, a B, and a C. So generally pretty lowly ranked overall, and we'll talk about why that's the case. Um, but before we waste any more time here, oh, and by the way, I want to recommend these lists very highly. I'll leave links to all of them in the description down below. They go into a lot more detail into each civ than I'm going to. I'm going to be doing broad overviews mostly. These guys go into the details and make sure you understand exactly where their rankings are coming from. Now, hopefully, you'll understand where my rankings are coming from too. But like I say, they won't be as well as deep. I'll put it that way. And I highly recommend these videos. So go take a look at them. For those of you who have not seen my previous tier list apaloozas, one for the Age of Antiquity and the other for leaders, I'll just let you know how this is going to work. We're going to look at not just an overall tier list of the best civs of the exploration age, but mini tier lists of who the best civs are for each victory type. And I think that might be helpful because a lot of us are looking for that anyway. When we go through a certain age, we want somebody who's going to get us a certain type of legacy path. So the first one we're going to look at is the military type. And so we have a lot of contenders here. Obviously, we have Bulgaria. We have, who else? We've got the Normans. We've got Spain to some extent. We have the Chola. Where are the Chola? There you are. Then we have, um, I'm missing somebody. Oh, yeah, Mongolia. Don't want to miss out on them. And the Majapahit. Okay. Now I'm just putting them in C tier for the moment, and these guys are sitting in D tier just as a matter of convenience. Um, Now, how do we rank these guys? Well, if we go alphabetically, Bulgaria is certainly a major contender here. Uh, they have a lot of abilities to um, push back. Sorry, try that again. We're going to start with Bulgaria, who I think a lot of people consider one of the main military civs of the exploration age, and they get high ratings from everybody. I'm going to make a weird argument here. I'm going to say they maybe aren't the best military power, even though they're one of the best civs for the exploration age. Look, they get you one extra settlement, over the cap, which is great. They are awesome at pillaging and plundering, and they can really fatten up your cities, which is terrific again. But in terms of actually taking over cities, if they have managed to build medieval walls, for example, the real strength of the Bulgarians is in their cavalry, and the cavalry actually do worse against medieval walls than anybody else. So that's a major disadvantage when you're looking at conquering cities. So I don't know if the Bulgarians are really an S tier civ when it comes to military. I would put them on A tier for sure. They're pretty strong. Uh, and they're not going to let you down, that's for sure. But I just can't put them in S tier purely based on military might and taking over cities. That is not their particular strength, although they can do it. It's not their go-to ability. As for the Normans, meanwhile, there's some mixed feelings about the Normans overall, but they do have a +2 settlement cap. The Chevalier are strong. They're one of the best calves. They have good defense as well. Not that that's going to expand your empire's reach, but once they build a settlement on their own, it goes up with walls once they get deep enough into the exploration age. So, they can expand and they're not going to lose stuff very easily, which is a big advantage. And their traditions, uh, their social policy traditions, buff up their cavalry. So that's a big advantage of the cavalry. Where Bulgarians have a major weakness in their cavalry, the Normans have a major strength. And I know I've heard a lot of people say the Normans are kind of meh. I'm not one of those people. I think they are, in fact, one of the best military civs. Um, and I'm going to put them ahead of the Bulgarians, actually. That might be a tiny bit controversial. I don't think people are going to do spit takes over this, though. But anyway, that's the Normans. As for who else do we have? I was going to do this alphabetically and I failed miserably. But it's just as well because I'm going to come to a couple of guys here at the very end. Um, I think we'll go with Spain. Spain, sadly, um, they're okay in terms of military. They do have the one +1 settlement cap. They're much stronger in distant lands, though, and I think they have a stronger economy than a lot of the other military civs, which is great. So that can help support an expanding empire, which is awesome. But militarily, their strength is in an infantry. That's kind of the weakest unit in the game as a whole. Not their unit in particular, but civs that rely on infantry are not the strongest military civs in this particular version of civilization. So I wouldn't put them higher than a B, actually, despite that extra settlement cap and all of that. And I'll tell you why, because I want to compare them to a couple of other weaker civs that are actually stronger in one regard. Um, let's skip, though, to probably the best one, the Mongolians. Let's just put them up here and we'll talk about why they're an S tier military civ. Let's just start with they have a +4 settlement cap. They have high expectations. I'll just put it that way. They can only grow. If they don't grow, somebody shoots them at the end of every day. Um, and not only that, the thing I like about them, they get extra happiness in their acquired settlements, which is a huge bonus. It helps them reestablish the settlements as theirs a lot quicker than most other civs do. And that means they can move on to another settlement. It's really a very finely honed system. And they get military bonuses on top of that. I don't think, I mean, they are of a par easily with the Persians and the Assyrians in antiquity. And I think, honestly, I'll cut to the chase here and I'll say nobody else touches them in the um, exploration age in terms of military power and ability. I think they're on S tier alone. Gee, was that a spoiler? Maybe it was. The Majapahit, as I hinted earlier, are kind of hard to peg. I don't always know where to put them. Um, I think, actually, let's talk about them with. No, we'll talk about them right now, actually. Um, they get a +1 settlement bonus. They can bombard with their navy. They can bombard land units, and which is a great ability. I think the difficulty is on the ground, boots on the ground. They're not as good as some of these other civs. In terms of their navy, I kind of like them, but they get some of their abilities sort of late in the game, and yet I'm still going to put them ahead of Spain if I can get them there. Yeah, I think they have a wider range of abilities than Spain does. I still like the Spanish economy in terms of establishing new settlements and all of that. I think they have the upper hand there. But on the seas, the Majapahit, I think, are stronger overall. Well, you see, I'm already rethinking that. Because I'm looking at the Chola here who are waiting patiently for me to come to a conclusion about them. Now, the Chola are lowly ranked overall, but in terms of their navy, I think they're quite strong. They have a naval unit that can do a double hit, can take two shots in one battle in one round, and that's the kind of thing that if you have a built-up navy, they can control the seas, just like the Majapahit can somewhat control the seas as well. And I think the Chola and the Majapahit could be either very strong if they control the seas, or at the very least, spoilers for some of the other military powers. So I'm kind of hemming and hawing. I think these guys are better balanced, but these guys, are they better than the Spanish? Not overall in terms of military might. I think the Spanish might still, with their economy, be able to support new settlements that they acquire a lot more easily than the Chola could. I don't think the Chola have the expansionist abilities that the Spanish do. So I guess I'm going to have to leave them sitting here in C tier. And I did forget somebody, by the way. The Songhai are also a military power. They have a +1 settlement bonus, and they're also great on navigable rivers. And they can form their own treasure fleets based on navigable rivers. So, are they strong enough in terms of a navy to um, last, like on their own continent, for example? Yeah, I don't know about that. I think one advantage they do have is a +2 movement ability on navigable rivers for all their units. Now, think about that. That means you could have a pretty sudden strike, a Songhai strike, against a neighboring settlement. And yeah, if it weren't the exploration age and you weren't concerned about, well, I guess they can form their own treasure convoys um, in their own territory. So there's that. I I would have to put them in B tier. I just don't know if they're ahead of the Spanish or behind the Spanish. I'm going to leave them here for the moment. Um, yeah, and I think that is our military tier list right here, with Mongolia in the lead, the Normans and the Bulgarians hot on their heels, and then the Majapahit, Spanish Songhai, and Chola. Again, think of these guys and their navies as really big spoilers and possible contenders, depending on how heavily naval your particular game is. That's the one qualifying thing I would add. Now, let's move on to the economic leaders. For the Chola as an economic power, they have a lot of abilities in terms of attaining gold. And this is something I talked about in a video I did about the economic victory condition in Civ 7, is that we have to distinguish between economic success, which often involves resources and trading ability, versus financial success, the accumulation of gold. Interestingly, they aren't often all that connected in terms of the victory condition and just financial success. It's kind of weird, but just bear with me for a sec. For example, the Chola makes gold in a lot of different ways, but at the same time, it doesn't really have a lot of extra trading abilities or resource maintaining abilities. And those are two key things that the Chola need in order to be an economic power. So I'm just going to let them sit at C tier for the moment because I don't see them as a strong contender here, although they're somewhat of a contender. Who else do we have? We have the Inca. Now, the Inca generate their own convoys and they have ways of making money, generating food. They have all of this. But just the fact that during the exploration age they can generate their own treasure convoys puts them at a big advantage in terms of, um, attaining the exploration age economic victory. Convoys are the key. More convoy points you get, the sooner you win. So really, the Inca have to at least go to B tier. We'll see how we feel about that in a second because they don't have much else besides that ability. And making a lot of food, which never hurts any of your other victory conditions, really. We also have, who else do we have here? Who's next on this list? I've left them down here. The Majapahit. Now, they also have the ability, somewhat late in their civics, I think, but they can generate their own convoys and they have a strong navy to control the seas if they do choose to start their convoys on overseas. And they can stop other people's convoys. So I would actually put them a little bit ahead of the Inca. I would put them up here because of that ability to generate their own victory and help stop other civs victories in terms of, well, the economy anyway, and pretty much, well, a lot of other things uh, with their navy. And who else do we have here? We have the Ming. The Ming again fall into that category of they are strong financially, but in terms of economic victory, that's quite different. They would certainly get an economic victory in antiquity because of their extra room for resources in terms of on a town to town city basis. But in exploration age, it's all about treasure fleets or treasure convoys. So they're not quite as good in that regard. So I'm going to leave them down here on C tier because financially speaking, they're great and they gather resources. They're just one age too late to really have that make a huge difference for how I see them economically speaking. Um, then we have the Shawnee. Now, the Shawnee are, again, strong in terms of finances, and they have an extra settlement bonus. As who else has that as well? I think the Chola have that as well, um, and I think the Majapahit maybe. So the settlement bonus doesn't really distinguish them or set them apart. They can get enormous amounts of food and generate that, but I don't think they're particularly strong economically, but while being strong financially. So I'm going to leave them on this tier. I know this is a strange criterion to use, but um, bear with me and see if what I say is borne out by actually playing and seeing who can get the economic victories. The Songhai are different again um, because they can generate their own treasure fleets, and they can generate a lot of gold as well. And they're very strong on rivers, so they can generate the treasure fleets on the rivers. They can defend them with a decent navy and plenty of movement. I mean, I put them on the same level with the Majapahit, economically speaking. I think, in fact, I don't know, maybe they're even stronger. Yeah, I think I got to say they're maybe a little stronger. I didn't think so initially, but I'm tending to agree with other tier lists that have placed them a little higher economically speaking. And yeah, I'm starting to see their point of view now. But we don't have anybody who I would consider a true S tier Civ when it comes to economics. Now, you could bump one of these guys or both of these guys up there, depending on your point of view. I don't quite see that based on what I see so far. The Incas could be an A tier Civ because they can generate their own treasure fleets. That's a huge advantage. Um, I'm feeling kind of generous at the moment. I think maybe I will put them on A tier. Yeah, that ability to generate treasure fleets, that really is a big advantage um, in this particular age. So yeah, I don't think they're quite as good as the Songhai or the Majapahit overall. And of course, as people have said, it is kind of hit or miss with the Inca based on how many mountains they have. So for those reasons, I mean, I definitely would put them last on A tier in terms of economics. But there you have it. Those are the six best economic civs. You could argue that any of these, given military might or scientific prowess or whatever, could put together the better overall civ and therefore generate more treasure fleet points just by being better overall. But in terms of ones that we know have economic ability, this is how I see them. One of my complaints about the age of antiquity has been that there aren't a lot of really strong cultural civs. That's not as true with the age of exploration. I think we have some good contenders here. I'm going to start with one with the Abbasid that are better known for their science abilities. They have some cultural abilities, although, I'm really not sure why they're considered a cultural civ because they're not that strong in this regard. In fact, they have a couple of nods towards culture, but that's about it. And I wouldn't put them above C tier. It's not their big strength. I think um, there's better stuff here. I'll put it that way. And better stuff is right next to it. The Dive Yet, the newest addition to the Exploration Age in the last DLC, they're pretty good. They have a plus, in addition to a +1 settlement limit. Um, their their culture is tied very much to the number of walls they build. So that's a bit of a restriction. It's not it's not a brutal restriction, but you'd like to. In fact, the more walls they have, the culture starts to look pretty good and pretty overwhelming. But that takes a while to develop, and I don't know how I feel overall about that particular limitation. Let's put it that way. But they also have a pretty good food and culture symbiosis um, with their buildings, and that's kind of interesting. Again, for more details on stuff like this, you really should look at the other tier lists that I'm going to feature down below. I think the Dive Yet have enough culture going on that I really couldn't put them below A tier. I think they're pretty strong overall, and I mean, I personally like them. But again, yeah, that's, with a bit of a caveat about all the walls. Really? Is that necessary? But anyway, pretty good. Next on the list, oh yes, I'm leaving the Abbasids there. The Hawaiians. I get sad whenever I think about the Hawaiians. When I first started playing the game, there were a couple of civs that really stood out for me in terms of the cultural victory, and the Hawaiians were one of them. And I do not know what to tell you about how sad it makes me, how nerfed they were. Um, they were nerfed in terms of the culture associated with marine tiles. They went from +2 to +1, and then there were some other nerfingalizations. And essentially now they're just not who they used to be. I thought at the time, at the beginning, they were probably my favorite Civ in Exploration Age. I really enjoyed playing them. But they're not who they used to be. And yet, culturally speaking, they're still pretty good. I would put them behind Dive Yet, maybe even in front of them. If if that's all I'm looking at is culture, I still like them better than some of the other Civs. Certainly better than the Abbasid, who, as much as I like them overall, I don't think of them as cultural wunderkinds or anything like that. Then we've got the Majapahit. Um, and I think they could be pretty good, except they have a lot of culture associated with them, but almost all of it is associated with the coast, just like the Dive Yet and their walls. But coast is not something you can build. You have to, if you have a strong coastal civ in antiquity, and you bring that into the exploration age, and you want to go for a cultural victory, the Majapahit might well be your civ. I would go with them. But if you're trying to build from the ground up in the exploration age, the Majapahit are not your civ for a cultural victory. They'll do okay, but they're not going to do great for you. So, I mean, I would put them as a B in terms of cultural victory because of that coastal tie to a lot of their culture. They're limited geographically for sure. And that leaves the Normans, who aren't really a cultural civ. I kind of think of them as a cultural civ because part of their special district generates culture, and that's kind of cool and it's useful. But I add them in here to add a little more cultural flavor because, as you see, once again, as in antiquity, I don't have what I would consider an S tier culture civ. These guys, the Hawaiians, would have been that civ, just would have been, but no longer. The Normans, I'm going to leave them at C tier, but they do have some culture. I think all round they have a number of things to offer, and culture is one of those things. But there you have it. That's my ranking in terms of culture in the exploration age. In case you couldn't tell, our look at science in the exploration age and the scientific victory is going to be a little bit different, maybe a little shorter. We have three Civs here with some scientific capability, really only two listed as scientific Civs. And let me just get the Bulgarians out of the way first. I have them here simply because, in the course of their pillaging and plundering, they do manage to rack up a fair number of science bonuses. No, well, not bonuses, but plunder, I guess. And so they get their science that way. The honest way, they eat it. I don't know. But they absorb it from their environment. So that kind of works. I think that means they don't really suck compared to everybody else in the exploration age, something I'm going to come to at the end here. Now, the Abbasid, of course, uh, they are considered one of the best Civs um, in the game, really, overall. And that's partly because of this. Their science itself almost lifts them above everybody else. I mean, there are other things too, but they practically ooze science, if that's a thing that we could accept in real life. Their buildings can receive a science adjacency with the town hall and the palace. They get, oh, let me see, a percentage of the gold from trade income as science. Uh, they have increased science and gold for each resource assigned to cities with a set number of urban population. It goes on and on. There's increased science in towns, increased science in cities. Well, what else do you have? Cities and towns. And you can reduce the maintenance for science and specialists um, in your cities. And then you have the madrasa with a science base and adjacency for quarters. And well, it goes on and on. Well, maybe I did reach the end of it there, but there's quite a bit. So in terms of science, there's that much question. You might question whether the best Civ in exploration, but I think they are the best Civ in terms of science. But close behind them are the Ming, and I think they get overshadowed too much because they've got a lot going on too. They get increased science for settlements with a garrison combat unit. Well, I don't know about you, but I usually have a combat unit in all my settlements. So that means you're going to be getting extra science just for that, just for breathing. Then you get increased science for each resource assigned to a city. When your merchants use the create a road function, that generates science. And they have a symbiosis between their science and gold buildings, which one gives gold to the other and one gives science to the other. So they do have some interesting stuff going on. Maybe it's not quite Abbasid level science, but it's good by any other stretch. Like they would be a solid choice for a science victory condition Civ any day of the week if you couldn't get the Abbasid for some reason. If they were homesick for a day and you needed somebody right away, the Ming would be your guy or Civ, so to speak. But overall, the pickings, while those two are great and the Bulgarians are at least fun, the pickings for science are pretty slim in the exploration age. Considering you were seeing the emergence of modern science during that time, it's a little disappointing there aren't more science leaning Civs here. But, hopefully that'll be changed as the game continues to develop. Now, I want to give a shout out to some of the other, not necessarily victory conditions, at least they're not yet. Maybe as the game continues to grow and develop and change, these will be added as victory conditions or something related to them. But if you're looking at expansionist Civs, I think you can't do better than Bulgaria. Um, they're going to help your cities get nice and fat. And after that, probably the Incans on a good day. On a good day, if they can see the mountains, they might even be better than the Bulgarians. But because we don't know if they can see the mountains, I'm going to put the Bulgarians at the top of that list for expansionism. Um, Mongolia, just because they're going to get you lots of cities. I mean, uh, oops, did I put the Majapahit there? I meant the Incas. Sorry about that. I'll just correct that there. And the Mongolians are going to expand your empire just by raw force. And I don't know whether to put them ahead of the Incans or not. On a good day, definitely the Incans, I think, are going to do that job better than the Mongolians. But yeah, maybe I have to put the Mongolians second, even in terms of expansionism. The Incas are just not 100% reliable because of the mountain factor. Um, After that, I would have to say it drops off. I think Spain is good in terms of the economics and supporting its cities overseas. And in that sense, it's a good expansionist city. Militarily, I don't know if it's going to do it. And food wise, unlike the Incans, I don't think that's the real strength of the Spanish. Um, and then I'm surprised why it's considered an expansionist um, culture. I see. I already said culture. I think they could be, but I don't think they're in the league with these guys, and maybe not even with Spain. So I would put Hawaii probably um, dead last as an expansionist culture. As far as diplomatic civs go, I don't think the exploration age was a time of great diplomacy, except in terms of saying, "Oh, I sunk your ship. Oh, please don't sink mine." Uh, it was, the age of piracy occurred during this period, the golden age of piracy, if there's such a thing. And so we don't have a lot to show here. We do have the Chola, whose wonder, their temple, does produce some influence. So if they get that first, uh, they do okay. But um, I, and they have a good shot at getting it first. So a +3 influence, that's not bad in terms of diplomacy. That definitely helps. And you'll notice I haven't really included wonders in factoring in these civs success or failures, simply because anybody can get them, even though the civ in question usually has a better shot at it. But I didn't take those into serious consideration in my evaluations. But with the Chola, yeah, I kind of want to because we don't have a lot to work with here in terms of influence. I'm looking at you, Normans. I'm not even sure why you're considered a diplomatic civ. They don't really bring a lot to the table, so I'm just going to leave them in C tier, only because I like them. Otherwise, they'd be down here in D tier with the peanut gallery. The Shawnee, on the other hand, are the real deal. I think they have influence to burn, and yes, their Serpent Mound does help as well, and they have an excellent shot at getting it every time, and that generates some influence. So I think really. Because they have two key sources of influence, they're head and shoulders above all the rest in this category. The last little extra pursuit I want to look at before I look at the overall exploration age tier list is the whole happiness religion continuum. And you can see we've got a lot of contenders here. I think there's a lot of room to develop a legacy path around civs like this and how they deal with happiness and religion. If we put those two things on the same plane or level. Um, the Abbasids certainly have a very high happiness threshold. I would put them up near the top. I'm just going to go down in order in terms of how I see them. I don't want to spend too much time on this. The Majapahit are not far behind. I think their happiness, for me, is what lifts them above a lot of other civs in terms of their value and their playability overall. And the Hawaiians may have lost a lot of culture. They did not lose their smiles. Happiness is a key part of Hawaiian, the Civ build. And then we have the Incans. It must be all that food bringing a lot of contentment because I think they're pretty strong in terms of happiness overall. Even the Mongolians, with their ability to make their newly acquired cities and towns happy or content, I think they have some ability in this regard. Uh, we also have the Normans. I'm just going in alphabetical order for these, except for these two. I think the Abbasid are a little better overall over the Majapahit. Maybe, no, maybe the Majapahit. I don't know who I would rank number one there. But here, I'm just going alphabetically. Sorry. The Normans have some happiness capabilities. Oh, I guess I'm not going alphabetically. The Chola, I have them out of order here. The Chola are certainly contenders. I might put them at the very end here if I were doing this by value and worth, but they have some happiness abilities. Even Spain does. Um, and Bulgaria is here mainly for the religious element. They, along with the Abbasids and their mosque, and Spain, I think Spain is a little, they'd be sort of B tier in terms of religion, but not so much in terms of happiness. Bulgaria doesn't really have a happiness component, but religion drives their culture. I would say they are either A or B tier in terms of that whole happiness religion continuum. They get stronger with religion, which I think you can't discount in terms of that build. It's um, if religion were to become a fundamental part of the game, I think the Bulgarians might even look stronger than they do right now, which that would be saying a lot. Anyway, just a few words about that. In case the game sort of shifts, you can say, well, yeah, I saw it here first. You know, we saw it coming, all this religion in the exploration age. Anyway, we're going to move on now to our overall exploration tier list. Now, those of you who know me from some of my previous videos will know that I tend to like more balanced civs overall. Although the well focused civ can, there are exceptions, and that's true in this list. So if you think it's going to be a list of well, it might not be exactly what you think it's going to be, but it is going to look kind of similar to other lists that have come before it. So it's not totally off the wall, I don't think. I'm going to start at the bottom, though, rather than go in alphabetical order. I really want it to make the Chola. I don't think they're a D tier Civ. I think their Navy really helps them, and they don't suck, but I wanted to find a reason to rank them higher because everybody ranks them so low, and I want it to be different. But I couldn't find anything to salvage them. I do like to take their ships out for a spin and do the old double tap on opposing ships. That's kind of fun. But the fun doesn't really extend much beyond that, unfortunately, for the Chola. Spain, Spain. I I thought Spain was going to be one of the civs to beat in the exploration age. Coming in, you would think so. But surprisingly, even though it looks like it has some real strengths, in practice, it doesn't hold together all that well compared to some of the other civs. Now, you could make Spain look better by defanging some of the other civs, which I think would be the wrong way to go. I think Spain needs a little something extra, and I don't know what it is. The Chola, I'm not sure what would help them. Spain, stronger military, maybe beef up the Navy a bit. Although that, you know, traditionally the Spanish Navy was strong, but it was beatable. Pirates were the bane of the Spanish Navy, in particular, the buccaneers. So I don't know. I don't know what you do to make Spain better and still remain historically accurate. But anyway, I don't want to say too much more about them. The Songhai, one of the knocks against them is they're all about the bucks. They're all about the money. And that's true, but it is a lot of money. And they're good on their rivers. They generate their own treasure fleets. I think they're good within this age. I think trying to get another type of victory condition with them is not going to turn out well overall. The Songhai are very specialized, and for me, that is a knock against them. In their particular case, I might make exceptions for other civs, but the Songhai doesn't rise above C tier for me. And I think they're a little better than Spain and a little better than the Chola, but not much better than that. Now, in terms of our B tier civs, you have no idea how much this hurts me. But I have to put the Hawaiians kind of at the bottom. They look like they're at the top right now, but just wait. I don't think the Hawaiians really work all that well. As a culture civ, I think they're much better, not as good as they used to be. Overall, they were like the Abbasids of culture. I think their culture helped them rise above the others just overall and help them with other victory conditions. But they're not there anymore. And that's too bad. I do regret that because I really enjoyed playing them when they were at their best. But that's not where they are now. Dive yet? Too early to say, maybe for me. I'm not bowled over by them, but I do like them. I think there's a lot of potential there. I think maybe I'm just not seeing the best way they can be successful yet. So that's why I put them second from the bottom in B tier. But I think they're very playable, and I think the Hawaiians are playable. These guys, less so. These would be the last ones I would pick if I were entering the exploration age. Unless I wanted an economic victory. Then I would maybe go for these guys. These guys, I would pick them, but I don't know how successful I would be. And beyond them, you have the Ming, who I think are a solid choice. I think you can go in a few directions with them, mainly scientific, but I think they can do quite well overall. They're playable. They're eminently playable for sure. And you know the walls help. A good defense never hurts. I think, yeah, I would have no hesitation about playing any of these really, but even less so about the Ming. I think they're pretty solid in a lot of ways. Um, and then we have the Inca, who you know why I put them here. I mean, on a good day they're maybe S tier. On a bad day they're gonna suck tier. You know, so B is kind of that in between point. They're not a B tier Civ. They're either an S tier or a suck tier, and that's that averages out to B. So I think I hope you understand. That's why I put them there. The next one you're not going to understand as easily. I put them at the top of B tier at least. Um, as some of you may know from my survey of antiquity civs, I'm not a big fan of the all military, no nonsense civs. I think Mongolia is a little bit better than Persia, who I don't have a great love for as a civ. I think they're solid, they're good military types. And yes, they're good enough militarily that they can help you in all the other victory paths, possibly. Although culture tends to be harder in antiquity if you're trying to build wonders and a military. Those two things don't go very well together. And I think the same might be true with culture and military in the exploration age. I think Mongolia is strong enough. Uh, I can understand why people put it in S tier or A tier for exploration age. For me, they just don't cut it because if you want a military victory, they're good for that. But I don't think they're much good for other things overall. And I like a little more balance, but you'll see coming up, I do make an exception, but not for the Mongolians or for the Songhai. Too specialized for me. So, no, they don't make the cut for S tier or A tier. In terms of A tier, maybe another surprise. I just like them because they're kind of well rounded. They are my comfort civ, aside from maybe the Abbasids or the Ming or the Hawaiians. I like the Normans. Now, I put them at the bottom of A tier, maybe they're more at the top of B tier. I like them as an all round civ, and I think their cavalry is awesome if you wanted the military victory. It's there if you want it. They have a little bit of culture, not really any science, unfortunately, and they can put a decent economy together. I like them as a somewhat well-rounded civ. I don't think they're perfectly well-rounded, but overall, I think they're decent, and I would put them in A tier. The Civ, I think, is going to be the one to beat in the future. Um, and I don't know if they're quite there yet, are the Majapahit. I might even put them higher by the time I finish doing this ranking. I don't know. The Majapahit have a lot of things I like. Do they all gel together? The happiness, the economy, the military side. You know, they're not quite there, but I think they could be. And if I just work at it a little more, I'll figure out a way where they could be an S tier Civ. But as far as I'm concerned, they're not quite there yet. Um, yeah, so not quite there. Uh, the Shawnee I put down in the A tier. I think they're so strong. I think I could see them being an S tier. I kind of hesitated. I didn't want to put too many up in the S tier, but um, and you can see who they're going to be. Um, but the Shawnee could easily be an S tier, and um, if you have Tecumseh leading the Shawnee, then yes, I, they're maybe the best S tier Civ. It's all about leaders in their case. Tecumseh is such a perfect fit for them. If you have anybody else, I mean, I don't know about Confucius. I don't know. I'm trying to think who Ashoka, world renouncer, might be a good choice for them. Maybe. I think he'd actually be a better choice for Majapahit and would elevate them maybe to S tier. But the Shawnee, their fate is very much tied with Tecumseh. Otherwise, they're just A tier. That's all. They're just the best A tier Civ. Uh, but they're almost an S tier for me. Now, who do I put as the runner up on here? I mean, you have the super specialized and the well, I don't know what to call the Bulgarians. Are they a generalist? Are they specialized? They specialize in pillaging. It's not the same thing, I guess. I think in the end, I would put the Bulgarians second, only because I like the Abbasid so much. Here, I'll put the Abbasid up there. We can just talk about both of them at the same time. The Bulgarians are fun as hell to play. I will say that. And I know that's got nothing to do with tier lists. But their real strength in it is in making your cities nice and fat and getting you lots of a little bit of everything. And I think that is S tier material for sure. The Abbasids, I guess I always will favor science over other stuff, over military power, which honestly the Bulgarians only sort of have. They're like a shadow military power. They're they're like a paper power in a sense. They're pretty good when you get them out in the field, but you know they're not going to take over a lot of cities for you that have walls anyway. The Abbassitters are going to keep advancing your science, and you're going to be in a better position probably when you get to the modern era. On the other hand, the Bulgarians are going to fatten your cities up and leave you in a pretty decent position getting into the modern era as well. I just like your odds better with the Abbasid in the end. And it's a close call. I like both of them very much for what you're looking for, whatever that is in the modern era. And so that is my tier list. Um, uh, you can call, oh, I'm sorry, I guess you can't call, but you can leave comments, complaints, modifications, observations, things I missed, things I didn't consider in the comments down below. Or if you liked what you saw, you can certainly drop a like or a subscribe if you liked it that much and want to see more. But for now, I have been and always will be Civilized Raccoon, and I will see you next time.